Alright, hopefully you can see the writing on here, and basically they're talking about some Muslims, and I forgot I had the banner down at the bottom, but they're saying the three of us were on top. We basically we deflowered her. She was a virgin. You must imagine that, a virgin, bang, 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 and they just go on and on and on, and they're bragging essentially about raping this individual girl over in Europe. Not sure if you can see the language, and I'll see when I come back on. I should have thought about my banner there that's on there. But how grotesque, how sick, what is happening to our society with these refugees? And that's the issue that a lot of people have, a lot of the concerns with the refugees that are going to be coming over to the United States, the ones that are over in Europe now. And you're starting to see a lot of the people, what they're saying, the right extremists are starting to get concerned over in Europe. Okay, this is Francesco Abbruzzino. This is the Scoop News, or the Uncensored Report. I do everything. It's a one-man show. I do everything from the production of this to the research to everything. In addition to the websites, it's all truly a one-man operation. I just put it out there. It's unedited, so whatever I put out ends up in it, and I go with it. We're going to talk about a few things today. First, we'll look through the headlines like I normally do. And then we're going to talk a lot about ISIL, some of the events that took place over the weekend. We might go a bit into this cashless society, an article that I saw Michael Snyder put out that I wanted to expand upon, and a multitude of things. So let's first get started with the headline news, and we'll do that by going over to my Scoop National News page. Essentially, let's see, what do we got here? It looks like I have a message. Let's see, this was just collective, so this was interesting. It was just a guy out in Baghdad that plays music, hoping to fight terror with songs. Engineers can't stop this enormous methane leak that's flooding LA. It's a river of harmful gas that's just spewing out into throughout LA, and they don't see it stopping anytime soon. I've just posted this one about General Schwarzkopf. He passed away at the age of 78. He was the guy that was in charge when I was in the Navy as a young airman in the Gulf War. Politico just touches on some of the waste, $7 billion worth of stuff that the Pentagon's gone out and purchased. And, you know, it's amazing, though. You can see, if you look at some of these reaches, you know, you get something like the methane gas. You get something where they blow $7 billion of our money, and it's only got a reach of 676, which, you know, I did just post it recently, and it'll probably get up into the thousands, but that's low for just getting started. Whereas this one, you got a mother who charged with an infant found dead on Christmas Eve, and it's already reached over close to 8,200 people, and it was put out about the same time as there. This is tragic too, and you see it all too often. I could tell by looking at her face. I'm assuming she's some kind of addict, a meth addict, more than likely, by looking at her. Had a lot of experience around these people, and it's a shame that we have another infant that's been found dead on Christmas Eve due to this. And that was up in North Carolina. Healthcare, how it's starting to fail patients. A lot of this is through Obamacare. I own a medical billing company, and a lot of individuals are basically, with the ICD-10 introduction, they're saying that's taken away from a lot of the individual care that a lot of these people used to receive. It's not as good as it used to be. I did put this up there. The France distribute iodine tablets over people that are near nuclear power stations. The reason I put it up there is just I don't think people understand how broken down our infrastructure is in terms of our nuclear plants, the leakages, the many problems that are out there. And you know, you see this over in France, but it could be happening here. We have if you want to call it the infrastructure of the nuclear power plants, this is just horrible shape. And there's no plans to get it fixed, reconstruction. And not just that, just the security. One of my shows I put up on here where a guy just drove right through the Calvert Cliffs plant, drove right up, was right next to the nuclear reactor within a couple hundred feet, and nobody was stopping him. Which is weird because I was stationed in the Navy outside of Calvert Cliffs, and I couldn't even get in there. My wife worked there, and I couldn't even get down there. The security was so tight. People would walk around with machine guns, and it's changed a lot. Just the Christmas time, the storms and the flooding that's happening out there, and they're showing how this falls is really being impacted by it, the Nakulala Falls. This guy, be on the lookout if you're over there in California, escaped from detainment. Confessions of an ISIS spy. Let's see what else we got. This guy rowing his boat around the Australia. This is just some pictures of the Iraq forces as they push through Ramadi. Let's see if I can expand it bigger. It just goes through a couple still shots as they capture Ramadi, which is good. You know, that was about 90 kilometers outside of Baghdad, and now they need to go to Fallujah and clear that area out, and this is a good thing. This just freaked me out. This kid's twisting. All right, and some ridiculous stories. This was a little David Duke. Now, this guy's an extremist, but he's trying to say that Donald Trump is more radical than he is. I'm not buying into that. I've heard him talk. This one confused me as how I'm assuming someone hacked into the system, said vote Donald Trump, because I seriously doubt the city did that intentionally. Let's see, what else we got here. Year in Taliban gains, and it shows that we haven't delivered to the top Afghan officials say basically the Taliban's taken up a lot of territory and they're losing a lot of the territory that they had, the cashless society. This is over in, I think it's Corsica or something like that. And basically they've been burning Korans, they're being gathering people. And, this one's actually about the Christians, where the Muslims went out in Berlin and they started beating some Christians, and just for the fun of it on Christmas, and they said, hey, we're Muslim, what are you? But there's another article down here somewhere where the extremists gathered. It looked like a similar picture right here. And they're having anti-Muslim demonstrations, and which is essentially defying the blanket ban on the public protests throughout Europe. They don't want you protesting the immigration, and they'll arrest you for it. So much for freedom of speech, right? Well, these guys are like, well, we've had enough of it. And as you can see, a lot of people are starting to get concerned. And even though there's a media blackout on a lot of stuff that the immigrants are doing, a lot of laws they're breaking, etc., people are still getting the information through the power of the internet. Even though Merkel has talked to Facebook and Twitter and asked them, not only Merkel, France, and everybody else, saying, hey, try to limit, try to block out, try to cut any anti-immigration posts that are out there, which is just crazy for freedom of speech in Western society. California, new law, no passing necessary to receive your high school diploma. That's some great news there, isn't it? Okay, another senseless killing, Chapel Hill, drive-by shooting, critically injures a child. I think he was 1 year old. Yeah, look at that. Senseless. Missing Dover woman. Here's another one. Family demands justice over toddler being shot in the face in New Jersey. Another 1 year old. This guy, he burned someone alive, basically, on the street. Breakdown of society, folks. Breakdown of society, and the storms out west, and lots of good news. Not good news, but a lot of news out there to cover. Let's go ahead and get over to some of the stuff that I like to opine about and take it from there. First, I did want to talk about basically how I do my setup is. I don't print a ton of notes. A lot of the radio guys will print up a ton of notes and they'll wave them everywhere. I do mine on a computer. I'll highlight some notes, and I'll have about, I don't know, sometimes if I'm talking about one issue, I can have 10 pages open, and I'm throttling between the pages and over to the screen and everything, trying to figure out what I want to talk about, the direction I want to go in. Hopefully the mic's working a lot better. It was having a real bad popping noise. I tried fixing it this weekend, and I'm hopefully it's working better. I'll find out after this show is produced. But basically, right now, what I wanted to go into a little bit was just the talking a lot more about ISIL, and how Islam is essentially taken away our freedom of speech. It's essentially, you got organizations out there like the organization is Islamic Corporation or CARE, and they're basically saying we don't want any negativity coming out about Islam. And we want you, the governments, or you different entities, to silence the people as much as possible whenever you see it out there. And a lot of the politicians are saying, okay, we'll do it. You got Obama shortly after his inauguration. His administration co-sponsored a resolution in UN Human Rights Council that basically endorsed the OIC's agenda or goal, which is to silence individuals and the freedom of speech when it comes to anyone that is negative on Islam. And that was the UNHRC Resolution 16/18. And it's not just there. Hillary Clinton, she went over to Istanbul, Turkey. And she said, look, we're going to try to curb any Muslim offending expressions through just the old-fashioned techniques of shaming and peer pressure, where we basically get this PC crew in the United States to buy into the fact that if you're negative on immigration, if you say anything bad at all, then it's bad juju's for you. It's not the cool thing to do. And that's the philosophy that they're using there. Then you got, just after the jihadist attack in the U.S. soil in San Bernardino, you had Loretta Lynch, who's our attorney general. She came out and said, look, we're going to start arresting anybody. We're going to take action against anybody that has anti-Muslim rhetoric. And we're going to basically consider it violent talk, and it won't be tolerated, and we're going to go out and arrest those individuals. Again, stomping on our freedom of speech. What kind of society are we becoming? So, you got all this, and, you know, even before those pronouncements, many Americans were already starting to feel that they could not conform to the official calls to say something when they saw something like in San Bernardino. They saw something happening. They saw an incident. They saw some curious stuff happening over there in San Bernardino. But due to the peer pressure, they did not go out and contact the authorities. But then you have, on the reverse side, you have people like last week, I put out a story where an individual said she called the authorities because somebody was having sex and they were screaming out, she says, ISIS is great. And so, you know, that person's being laughed at right now. And you got to wonder, should I speak up? You know, what if she was accurate? What if the person was yelling, ISIS is great, and they were a radical jihadist? Ends up it wasn't, but you know what I mean. And what this is doing is it's greatly emboldening those who believe in the mandate of the Sharia worldwide. It's emboldening them to get out there and do more. And Americans, Europeans, everybody have become increasingly concerned about evidence that actual and potential jihadists are on the move. On the move here in the United States. You know, and Obama, he'll sit there and blame it on the news, and it's not really just the news that's getting all that information out there, folks, as I'm going to cover in a bit. It's actual government entities that are putting out this information. So you can't just blame the media in saturation of these attacks, these actions, these terrorist actions as the fear factor for many Americans. And, you know, anyone who's out there and they doubt the peril that the Americans face, they need to look no further than what's happening over in Europe. Free speech. It's gone. It's eroding away. If they find it offensive, they'll throw you in jail. Before we face anything like choice, such as choice here, knowledgeable national security experts and responsible politicians have a duty to raise the alarm and offer constructive alternatives. You know, you can't sit there and just deny somebody the right to do so-called name-calling, character assassination. It's freedom of speech. You may not always enjoy that freedom. You may not always like what's being communicated. But the bottom line is we have the right to say and do whatever we want. There's certain restrictions, obviously. I can't say I'm going to go out and kill the president or something like that. That's, you know, there's certain restrictions to your freedom. It always cracks me up when you get these people on my social media pages. And they'll come out and just say something really ridiculous, like I'm gonna come over and beat the hell out of you or something, and they'll start throwing out a bunch of cuss words, and they'll just go on and on and on, get real derogatory, and then they get upset if you go ahead and block them, and they say you're violating my freedom of speech. No, not really. There's restrictions on freedom of speech. You can't just basically be an idiot out there, folks. You can't be a troll. All right. Now there was a New York Times article. This was another piece that put it out, and they said Sunday cites a number of legal experts and scholars who suggest placing limits on the First Amendment. And they're doing this all because the whole Islamic State propaganda thing that's out there, limiting free speech. This is the New York Times having legal experts out there saying that. And they mentioned a Bloomberg View article, which was posted in November. It had a Harvard law professor and former Obama administration official, Cass R. Sunstein, that came on there and basically said, you know, he basically is stating that there's a clear and present danger out there, and that Justices Oliver Wendell Holmes and Louise Brandeis argued in favor of some form of government censorship. And it was something that goes back to World War I, when they wanted to censor any of the anti-military draft individuals that were out there. And they tried to use them as precedents. And you had Eric Posner suggest that laws that make it a crime to access websites that glorify, express support, or provide encouragement to ISIS should be stopped. Now, on the ground, that seems great, right? Oh, yeah, it makes sense. You don't want websites out there and people promoting ISIS or this extremist ideology, theology, this extremist view. But then here's the problem, folks. Government takes that little step, and then they go further and further and further until they erode all of your liberties away. You know, a good example is TSA. I did an article the other day on them. Originally, the TSA was, they brought them in. They figured, hey, if the government brings them in, we have them under our watch, we can better control everything. Next thing you know, they're leaving the airports. They're going out to different venues. I was out at the Donald Trump event, and TSA was out there telling me I couldn't film them. And they're starting to become the federalization of the police, and they're doing it little bit by little bit by little bit. They're taking more of the piece of the pie. And that's what happens all the time when you get these government. You pass a law, and they base everything upon that law, and slowly but surely they erode your liberties, your freedoms away from you. And that's the biggest concern here. I get the whole thing, but they're trying to sell taking away our freedoms and our liberties on a scare tactic. That you're going to go out and we're going to try to defeat ISIS and their whole propaganda war that they're fighting on the net. They want some kind of graduating penalties and all that stuff. But, you know, bottom line is, guys, when you look at the First Amendment, it's basically, it states that Congress shall make no laws abridging the freedom of speech or freedom of the press. And that includes Islamic State propaganda. You know, as reprehensible as it may be, we got to let it go out there. You may not like the message that David Duke's pushing with his KKK, but freedom of speech allows him to go out there and put it out there. On the other side of the spectrum, you may not like that Black Lives Matter is in the agenda they're pushing, but you got to keep it out there. You just can't come out and cease to allow these people to have their freedom of speech just because you don't like what they're communicating. You can't come on and censor my show because you don't like what I'm putting out. Okay? And that's the biggest problem here. So you give them a little bit, they take a ton, and we got to be careful of this, folks. We really have to be careful of it. All right, right now I'm going to go into a video of Turkish, and we're going to talk a little bit about Turkey and ISIL right now. And let me get this video set up. It's basically, they're talking about how the Syrians and Turkish borders open and how ISIL's using Turkey as basically a stepping stone into Syria, into Iraq, and everywhere else. So let me pull this up real quick, get it set up here. Not sure how, is there an ad on there? Nope, hold on. Okay. We got volume. All right, folks, let me get you to the big screen here, and we'll go watch that video real quick. No sound with it, huh? There we go.
To their spokesperson.
We found several mobile phones recently. They contain messages with the coordinates of the movement of fighters. The problem of ISIL didn't just appear out of the blue. Somebody is allowing them to freely cross borders. They use airports and hospitals. Where do they get treatment? In Turkish hospitals. ISIL fighters come from Uzbekistan and Chechnya via Turkey. We have plenty of documents proving that Turkey is providing logistical support for them. The terrorists are even going back to their home countries via Turkey. Those fighters who come to Turkey wouldn't be able to orientate themselves on their own without local guides. They are taking the militants to the border. They're working in coordination with the Turkish intelligence services. This is crystal clear to us now.
Alright, now a couple things here. Let me get you guys back to the split screen. Oops, let's stop this guy. A couple things here you have to remember is this guy is part of Iraq, the Shiite Iraq. They're upset. Turkey just came in, sent a bunch of troops into their area. They said they were leaving. A few left. They didn't leave. Now they're saying more were leaving just yesterday, I think. So you got somebody, obviously, Iraq and the government that's not happy with Turkey right now. And you always got to watch this stuff in the propaganda war. That particular news outlet is RT. They're out of Russia. Russia, as everyone should know, has problems with Turkey. So sometimes it's going to be a little biased. So, you know, I'm sure they're out there and they're saying it is pretty accurate because I read across the spectrum, left, right, Russian, Syrian, Press TV, American channels, and basically it is common knowledge that the ISIS are walking back and forth from Ankara, you know, the Turkish border. It's pretty wide open. They're getting logistic support, and basically everything that he's communicating, this general, is pretty accurate. The reason I bring that up, though, about who, you know, it being RT or it being this individual in Iraq Army, is so that people get an understanding of what's out there. Just because it's news, it's not always going to be just fair and balanced. My news that I put out is always going to have my leanings. My leanings are a little bit right, so they might be a little bit more right. I try to cover both aspects of it, but I may not always do the best job at it. And this guy here, I can guarantee you, he's going to give a negative perception, a negative picture of Iraq or of Turkey. And the same with Russian Times, RT. Now, RT is not as bad as Sputnik, but you always got to remember when you're looking at any of the communications I put out to dissect through who the communication's coming from and what their agenda is. And trust me, America is the same way, folks. Our commercial for Fox, NBC, CBS, ABC are exactly the same in this propaganda war. All right, never bring your dogs into the studio. So, basically, Turkey's out there. They're treating these ISIS fighters. They're helping them out. And a lot of people might sit there and say, well, exactly why? Why would Turkey help these guys? What do they have to benefit? They have a lot to benefit off of it, folks. They are the ones, they don't like Syria. They've never liked the Syrian government. They don't like the fact that the Turks are in there defeating a lot of the Syrian government and gaining ground. Just that the Turks were the only supposed moderate opposition in there. We were supporting them. They were going in and beating people. Then we allowed Turkey to come in and bomb the hell out of the Turks because the Kurds, because the Turks don't want the Kurds to get any more land. And that's the reason they went into Iraq just recently, is to stop the Kurds. So Syria has, look, Turkey has more than enough reasons to go into Syria and not like them and allow these ISIS people to flow back and forth. America, for some reason, we just sit there and ignore it. I'm not sure why. Not sure why whatsoever. But this one article comes in and explains it a little bit better. And it was something that was put out by Sputnik. But it says that America's Muslims can by no means be regarded as the enemy within. And that it's a little bit different. There's an entity that supports, within America, that supports Daesh, which is the Islamic State, ISIL, and they support them from within the United States. And a lot of it is the Wall Street tycoons that are out there making all the money off selling the weaponry. Now, you might say, well, we're not selling them directly to them. No, we're not, folks. ISIS is like all other anti-government terrorist groups in Syria, has received a steady flow of weapons from the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and Qatar. These are monarchies out in the Middle East. They want to see the demise of Syria. And guess who they're propped up by? They're propped up by companies like ExxonMobil and other powerful U.S. companies that purchase their oil. And a lot of people believe this whole Syria conflict started with over a dispute with the pipeline that Assad did not want put in there. And a lot of the support for ISIL comes out of Saudi Arabia, comes out of Qatar. These are states that are propped up by Wall Street as they're out there pouring weapons into these countries, which in turn are pouring them into ISIS groups over in Syria. And Saudi Arabia doesn't boast some large army, so why are they buying so much weaponry? It has the fourth largest military budget in the world, but they don't have the army to support that. We just sold them, we just agreed to another huge selling of weaponry to them. They're being armed to the teeth with American weapons. Is this any coincidence? No, it's not, folks. So you got people like contractors like General Electric, Boeing, Lockheed. They're all making an effort to keep Washington on good terms with these pro-ISIL Gulf dictatorships like Saudi Arabia so that they can make the big bucks. Turkey, they're out there facilitating the sale of oil from ISIL, but they're denying it. America's even denying it because Turkey's their buddy. They're in bed with them. But it's not just Russia that's putting out this information. Everybody, it's been common knowledge. If you watch this program, if you read a lot of the different communications out there out of Europe, out of Russia, out of the Middle East, it's very common knowledge that Turkey's been buying this oil at the cheap, at a discount, and reselling it, which in turn supports Daesh, ISIL. But let me see. A lot of times, it amazes me how a lot of people just sit there and they buy what America sells them, saying, oh, we got no involvement, we're not doing anything, this isn't us, we don't support them, but we do it all indirectly. We do it all indirectly. Now, another hot spot where ISIL is penetrating and it's getting worse and worse, and this was a regime change by the United States. I've always been against it. And I was watching, we got a new channel, One American News, and they did an excellent documentary on ISIS. Islamic State, I think is what it's called, the documentary. And for the first time that I can recall, seeing it on a TV like that, they went out and they explained how ISIL was basically created when the United States went into Iraq. We told all the Saddam loyalists, the Sunnis, sorry, you can't be part of the government. We kicked them out. They became basically Al-Qaeda of Iraq and later became ISIS. We basically created this entity when we went in there. Then we decided to supply them with the arms and the backing so that they could overthrow Assad. Nobody wanted to believe that. And it didn't become more evident to the average American until Russia went in and said, well, look, we're tired of playing this game. We're going to bomb the heck out of ISIL and show you what's really being done. And once they started bombing, next thing you know, ISIL's getting their butts kicked. And America's looking like, whoa, we have been doing nothing all this time but talking some smack. Unfortunately. But you get this regime change, and it doesn't. We go in, we get rid of these old governments, and it does nothing. We went into, we didn't help Mubarak. Muslim Brotherhood came in. They were knocked out by the army. Still an extremist hotbed. Iraq, we got rid of Saddam. Look at that situation now. Assad's fighting to stay in there. Yemen, we were part of that too. Libya. Libya. Thanks to, you know, he came out, and a lot of people said, thanks for destroying our country. Right now, you don't hear a lot about it, but the ISIS group, it controls a large chunk of Libya. I think I put out something the other day where it showed Libyan ISIS groups, ISIS patrol groups patrolling the Libyan area as police. And basically, they came out, and Barack Obama welcomed the endorsement of Libyan political agreement signed back in December 17th, and they said, thanks a lot for destroying our country. You took 42 years of dictatorship where we were just humming along. It was fine. It was a machine that was just, it was running. It wasn't a perfect machine. Gaddafi was a bad guy, but it was a lot better than it is now, and our country wasn't destroyed like it is now. And so they basically came out and said, thanks, but no thanks for what you've done to our country. Sharia law is there. Extremists are running it. You know, they got this new pact that they're putting into place and they're signing, which Obama called to congratulate them on, but they said there's no army to control it. There's nobody to step up and say, okay, we're going to enforce this. There's nothing in place for that, folks. So they said it's essentially useless even putting it into place. And they, once again, thank you for the destruction of our country, Libya. Used to be a great country, a beautiful country. But like I said, Gaddafi was no angel. I mean, we don't even want to start talking about how bad and evil this guy was and what he did to their society. You know, Saddam, all those guys. It would be great if you could, you know, I think one thing I believe is democracy is like the worst thing that could be coming into any of these Middle Eastern countries. And you almost need a monarchy to control the population, because if you bring in democracy, unfortunately, they're going to elect people that have extremist views, the Muslim Brotherhoods out there. It never fails. It seems to happen every time. You know, so I went out and I searched, and I did some search a little bit on the Prophet Muhammad, and looking at what ISIS is essentially preaching out there. ISIS has demonstrated basically an unflinching determination to take anyone who dares to disagree with it and put them down. It's slaughtered the Yazidi Christians over in Iraq, Syria. Vast majority of their victims, though, have been Muslims, folks. Muslims. And it's the Muslims who resist or refuse to acknowledge their authority. If you're a Shiite Muslim and you don't convert and say, hey, I'm going to follow the edicts of the Shia, you know, it's just a mild difference in what they're in the sects, they'll kill you. They've even executed Sunni clerics who have refused to form an allegiance with them. Sunnis. Women that don't support their worldview, dead. I've seen videos, many videos where they essentially, it was on that One American News documentary where they have this one guy, Hadini or something like that. He's in charge of policing and enforcing that everybody follows the religious laws of ISIS, essentially in their territory. And he's the one judge and jury if they find someone is guilty of violating any of the Sharia laws. And they'll sit there and they, you know, the one that I saw in this documentary, they had the guys out there, they were blindfolded sitting on the street, all three of them. They were being judged. One of them got shot in the head. Next thing you know, they're all shooting weapons up in the air, saying Allah Akbar and everything. And, you know, part of this whole extremism of this ISIS group is the motivation. It's rooted in a perverted interpretation of the scripture of radical extremists. If you look at the Quran, it shows groups like ISIS act in complete defiance of Islam, the injunctions of Islam. You look at this, it says the Quran, for instance, equates one murder to the elimination of the whole human race. And it considers persecution and disorder on earth as an even worse offense. It lays emphasis on peace, justice, and human rights, and it champions these philosophies. Does that sound like what ISIS is doing? What ISIL is all about? And, you know, Muhammad, if you go back in there, this article actually talked about how he predicted that people would act as ISIS does, and they would destroy the whole Islamic faith. That they would hijack the Islamic faith, which ISIS has done. And he warned people to be wary of this. You know, whenever ISIS gets out there and they kill in the name of Islam, they're claiming that they're following the Quran, or they use the holy month of Ramadan to spread anarchy across the entire globe. I got to tell you, the Prophet Muhammad explicitly warned against what he called these imposters. The only people who refuse to reflect on this point is ISIS and their sympathizers. It's concerning, folks. It's concerning. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. What do we got? Another 15, 20 minutes. And maybe we'll go into Cashless Society. I got a few things on my agenda. Let me see what we want to cover. And this commercial, what happens, basically, I put up a picture or some music, and it's longevity. Purchase it. It helps to support the program. Vitamins, minerals, some of the best that are out there. By all means, go to my site, theuncensoredreport.com. Just click on the banner you'll see to the right, or you should see a link at the top that says longevity. Click on it, purchase, and start your way to good health, getting better health. All right, folks, let me cut to that commercial so I can set up, and let me see my screen here. And we are back on longevity. Check them out. All right, let's talk a little bit about government, because it's something I had on my notes that when I went to the commercial, I saw my notes, and basically, besides putting up all these documents, I got some notes to remind me of what I want to discuss, because there's so much information out there, but you can't cover it all within the hour. But there's certain stuff that interests me that I wanted to talk about, and so I'll put it out there. And one is just what the government is hiding from us. I thought it was very interesting. It's an older publication, but it touches on a lot of stuff that people just aren't aware of. And, you know, they're labeled conspiracy theorists or against the norm because their opinions aren't in line with what the government wants you to think or to realize or whatever. And so it's essentially what are they hiding from us? What is the government out there doing and hiding from us? And you find this out when you do stuff and you start doing some digging. And this article referred back to Watergate, and it used it how people labeled these individuals as conspiracy theorists, if you will. Back then, I don't think they did. I don't think that word actually came out until like Clintonian days, but they'll consider them the conspiracy theorists because They said something was up with that whole Watergate hotel back in 72. Something was going on there. And it wasn't until 74 that the White House tape recordings linked Richard Nixon to Watergate. And they saw it suddenly surfaced. And suddenly these theories that were conspiracy theories were actual reality. And it tends to happen a lot, I'm seeing. You'll come out. You'll put out communication. You'll put out news. You'll research it, you'll document it, you'll have top officials that'll come on and you can quote them. You see it at the federal level. I even have it in my local city blogs where I'll come out and I'll do all my research, get all the facts in there. And people will come on, the trolls, and they'll call you basically, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. They'll try to make it sound like the information's inaccurate, that you're a conspiracy guy, that you're this, that you're that. Then all of a sudden, 4 or 5 months later, the story comes out, and what you communicated was dead on accurate. But by that time, people don't remember that Frank Abbruzzino came out with this story. Frank Abbruzzino communicated this stuff. Alex Jones, the Michael Savage, all these guys out there. And more times than not, it's pretty dead accurate what they're communicating. I can tell you, like Alex Jones, a lot of people call him conspiracy guy, kook, whatever. He's pretty accurate in a lot of the information that they research. And they'll give you all this information. They'll give you the document trail, the links and everything. But then trolls will come out there and say, this guy's a conspiracy guy. You can't believe him. And they try to set that one little negativity in the person's head that makes them think, okay, this guy, whatever he puts out is not accurate. Or you got these extremists to the left that'll say, oh, that guy's a liar. No matter what they put out, this one person, no matter what Breitbart puts out, no matter how factual it is, no matter how accurate it is, all the documentation, they'll say that he's a liar and anything that comes from him is wrong. Wrong. Well, the paper Breitbart. Forget the fact that NBC and everybody else is saying it. If I put Breitbart, people will say, no, it's a lie. If I put NBC, they'll say, oh, okay, let me watch it. It always amazes me. But this article, it talked a little bit about the Federal Reserve, which was December 24th back in, the early 1900s. They passed it with like 3 senators on the floor in the weeest hours of the night. And the Federal Reserve's primary purpose is, in my mind, is basically to transfer wealth from the poorest of us to the wealthy of us, from the middle class to the wealthiest. It's owned by foreign governments. I think, 6 foreign, basically, banks. It is a bank. It's not a government entity. It's a corporation, folks. It's basically out there to protect the banking's interests. Not part of the government. Even though you think it is, it's not. Each of the 12 reserve banks are organized into a corporation whose shares are sold to commercial banks operating within its district. Who runs and operates this corporation? I don't know. They say the Federal Reserve Chairman. That's just a government person that's in there. I don't think he controls it. She now yelling. How about when Snowden came out? Or when a lot of us kooks, us conspiracy guys, were saying the government's surveying us. They're watching our every move. They're taping our phone calls. They're watching our postings. They got their camera in your cable box. They got the camera. They're sneaking in the camera here on your computer. Nobody wanted to believe it until Edward Snowden came out. And he leaked that they were just doing just that. The government was spying on us. That national security had a backdoor to visit databases under legal authority. And a lot of times, I think one of the things they do is if the IP, if it flows over to a foreign country, which almost all of them do, and then back into the U.S., then you can go grab the data because it's gone international. Something like that. But, NSA, they have this massive surveillance. It's called the X key score. And it allows government to enter a person's name into the program. It pulls a ton of information. Some would say too much information. But they can basically go in there. They can type in Francesco Abbruzzino and pull up all kinds of information on me. Extract it from all kinds of data sources. This article also talked about campaign spending with super PACs, how they become common, thrown into the presidential elections. U.S. Supreme Court said in its Citizens United decision that outside groups can raise unlimited funds as long as they don't coordinate with the campaigners directly. So they don't. What the campaigners do is they'll put a message in their website, what the direction they'd like to see money flowing in, and they put a lot of little hints out there, and the super PAC knows where to go. There's always ways around all this stuff, folks. 9/11. 9/11 was one of the biggest conspiracies out there. And it's long been the focus of controversial government conspiracy theories. It's nearly impossible to shift through and identify fact from fiction anymore out there. Yeah, it's the former Senator Bob Graham. He chaired the 9/11 investigation. He claims we still don't know the full story behind September 11th and the attacks. And he essentially believes the government's covering it up. Graham told a Tampa My Fox channel, they essentially are the creator of ISIS and primary source of its financial support today. He was talking about the United States government. This is a guy that was on the 9/11 committee, folks. Then Saudi Arabia feels they can do almost anything. Nothing is going to happen to them because they are being protected and covered up by the United States government. His specific job on that 9/11 committee was to draft up the classified documents that allegedly reveal Al-Qaeda had helped launch the September 11th attacks. And he told the news channel that there was evidence that the United States supported the terror network and could possibly be supporting ISIS today. But because he's under a gag order, he can't talk anymore about it, folks. So we'll never really know the full story there. What is happening? What is our government hiding from us? You get stuff like this TSA thing today that came out, I think it was on Friday, maybe Thursday, where the government has come in and they've basically said that they're going to they introduced this new concept, this new rule that banned the ability of travelers to opt out of their controversial naked body scanner. Essentially, basically, anyone under 18 wasn't getting it because it was a naked body scanner. You could opt out. Now they're saying you can't. So this individual came in and filed a suit. Jonathan Corbett is suing the federal agency. Corbett is the guy that went out and he proved how bad, how lax the TSA's enforcement was out there, how you could basically sneak a bomb on there. And he exposed their body scanners to be completely useless in detecting any type of concealed weapon. Well, Corbett went out there and he said, look, this is invasive. You can't do this. You can't just sit there and say, we're going to conduct these full body ones and you can't have an opt out. But again, it's government overstepping. TSA overstepping. TSA, I did an article on TSA and I'll post it later today. I'll repost it. They're out of control. The growth of this entity is ridiculous. And it's no longer the individual at the airport, folks. These are hardened federal police that are out there monitoring our streets, and they're dictating to our local police. When I was at that Trump rally, and originally my article was Sheriff's Department won't let you film them, violating my rights. Basically, I carry a press pass. I'm known locally as press. Everyone knows me throughout the Sarasota County. I'm pretty well known here in terms of my communications and blogs and everything. So I go out there, and there's a news crew right there filming. I forget which channel, and I go out with doing my thing. And I turn around. I got my press pass on and everything, and my camera I was bringing it down just then, and this lady gets really hard with me. I saw sheriff. I saw her in camouflage. She tells me I can't film her. Turn the camera off, violating my right, which I can film her. And besides the fact that she's being filmed by everywhere, because there were cameras everywhere out there. But lo and behold, it ended up being a TSA wearing a sheriff thing out there. And basically, when I asked who's in charge to see where to go, because actually prior to this lady communicating with me, I asked, who do I talk to about getting in the press entrance? And she was right there, and they said she's in charge. So she knew I was press when she told me I couldn't film her. But then what struck me too is the fact that this TSA agent is in charge of the local authorities there at this event, which was concerning. And I wrote an article, I'll post it again out there. All right, I think we're going to end it there because we didn't do too many commercial breaks. And the next thing that I wanted to cover about cashless society will probably take me about 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and I don't have the time for that. We'll go over my 1 hour. So this has been Frank Abbruzzino. Remember to check out Longevity. Go to my site, theuncensoredreport.com. Check out Longevity. It helps support me in the program. Right now, I just do some AdSense and I do the Longevity to try to bring in some money. So whatever you can do to help me out would be great. And if you have any ideas for the show, any direction you'd like me to go in, if you want me to research anything for you, anything like that, go ahead and communicate it to me. I'm pretty accessible on any of my scoop pages on Facebook, Twitter, or you can visit my website, like I said. All right, this has been Francesco Abbruzzino. Everybody have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.